Hello and welcome to Triumph Vintage Pens. My name is Glenn Atkins. I'm going to be your host for today's episode. We're going to do a couple of things that I think are unique on YouTube, and I don't think they've ever been done. If they have, certainly post a link to the videos in the comment section below. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to walk through a Parker 51 Aerometric vintage pen restoration from start to finish. And the second thing that we're going to do that I think is unique is this will be the first time that I have ever looked at this pen. So you and I together are going to see essentially live everything that I encounter with the restoration of this pen. So any obstacles that I encounter, we're going to deal with them essentially live as if you were sitting next to me here at the workbench. So there's been no pre-preparation of this pen, and we're going to tackle the problem together literally as it occurs. And do the restoration from start to finish live. So without any further delay, let's get started.
One of the first things that I like to do is take just an overview look at the pen to see what kind of condition it's in. You can see on this particular one there's a little bit of brassing right here on the cap. It's too early to tell for sure whether that will buff out with a rouge cloth or perhaps some simichrome, but overall, the pen looks to be in pretty good cosmetic condition. It's got a gold-filled cap, a traditional arrow clip, and the body and section are both black. It appears to have some ink staining on the feed. The nib, at least under the naked eye, looks to be in good shape. The clutch ring is decent. And looking at the filler unit inside, it looks to be in very good shape as well. Obviously has some ink usage in it before, but that's one of the things that I like to do first, is just take a quick overview look at the pen and try to get a good idea of what I'm going to be dealing with during the restoration. The next thing that I like to do is take the pen and dip it in just a little bit of water and try to determine how much residual ink is in the sack. This happens to be a container. It's got about 12 ounces of water in it, but it really doesn't matter how much water you use. And what you do is you literally just dip the pen into the water and you work the ribbed bar several times, and as you can see in this particular pen there's a moderate amount of blue ink coming out. What we ended up with on this particular pen is it's running pretty clear now after the third or so time. So we've probably gotten about as much ink out of here at this point as we can, because as you can see the water's running fairly clear. I've seen these where almost no ink comes out on the first time, and I've had to do this on some 7 or 8 times to get the ink to run clear. So that's good for this step during the restoration. There are a couple different ways to get the shell or hood off of a Parker 51, and this is true of both the Aerometrics and the Vacuumatics. A lot of people like to use dry heat. I like to use wet heat actually, because it's easier for me to control. And this is about a 12-ounce container. And I have put it in my microwave oven for about 1 minute and 45 seconds to a couple of minutes. The lid sights on the 51 can take temperatures up to about boiling or slightly above. I usually like to start out around 180 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit or so, and we're going to soak this in the water right up to the clutch ring for about 4 minutes. You might be able to see actually a little bit of ink leaching out from time to time. The hot water also helps to break up the ink that's in there. And when this is done soaking, after about 4 minutes, I'll be back. Now this next step in removing this hood represents one of the danger areas, and you want to be careful, and over time you will develop a feel for how much pressure you can put on this. Remember, this has been soaking in a hot water bath for about 4 minutes. I think our starting temperature was around 173 or 4, something like that. And the next step that I do is to take just a pair of grippers and using a moderate amount of pressure try to remove this Parker 51 hood. This particular Parker 51 hood is going to take some more soaking treatment. Sometimes they will come off the first time after about a 4-minute soak. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 times to do that. Other times you have to alternate between the hot water soak and an ultrasonic bath. So what I'm going to do now is go soak this thing for another 4 minutes or so, and come back and we'll try the grippers on it to see if we can get the shell off of this particular pen. Alright, let's see where we are on the second go of this. This is immediately after the second 4-minute soak in a hot water bath. And again, we're having absolutely zero luck with this, so I'm going to go try it again, and I'll be back. Alright, let's see if the third time was the charm on this thing and see what we can do. This is after a third soak in a hot water bath, and let's see if we can get this shell off of here without doing any damage. Alright, now as you can see, the shell is beginning to come off because the nib is obviously not aligned correctly with the shell anymore. So it looks like the third time perhaps is going to be the charm here. And let's see if we can continue to get this shell off, and I'll show you what the inside of a Parker 51 Aerometric looks like. Alright, very good, huh? Success. That is the next step. So the third time was a charm, getting this off. Like I said earlier, sometimes they'll come right off, sometimes it takes 3 or 4 times, sometimes it takes a combination of heat bath, ultrasonic bath, things like that. But that is a very good result in getting the hood off, as you can see, undamaged and ready to be cleaned further. So let's take it from there. Okay, the next thing that I like to do is go ahead and take the collector, the nib, the feed, and then hopefully there's a usable breather tube inside of that. So the next thing I like to do is take that mechanism out. Usually after a hot water soak, it will come right out, and as you can see, that's what's happening on this particular pen. So out comes the collector, got the breather tube here, the collector here, of course the 14 karat gold nib, and then the ebonite feed. Then at this point I like to go ahead and remove the feed, nib, and breather tube from the collector. Proper way to do that is to put the nib side in the bend of your first finger like so, and then your thumb over the feed like this, and gripping the collector and the nib and feed. What you want to do is turn the collector, if you can, and eventually the nib and feed will come out. Nib is off there. Now this is, you got to be real careful here. These ebonite feeds are quite delicate. I haven't broken one yet, but you've got to be very careful here. But essentially, you do the same thing here, and eventually, the feed will come out and separate from the collector and the nib, and leave you with the feed and the breather tube. All right. The next step for me then is to remove the breather tube from the feed. Again, this is just a few minutes outside of a hot water soak, but what I'm going to do just for a couple of seconds here is re-dip this feed and the breather tube in this hot water bath. What I like to do is use my grippers again here. It's not necessary that you do that, but it seems to me that I don't know, it just gives me a better comfort level. And what you want to do is just pull straight on the breather tube like so, and it will come right out of the end of the feed. And then what you want to do is carefully examine, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, carefully examine the hole in the feed that the breather tube came out of to make sure that the breather tube did not break off a piece of itself inside that collector, and I don't believe it did in this case. I'm going to check it quickly with a loop, and we'll see for sure that we got a clean separation between the breather tube and the feed. Okay, we did get a good separation between the breather tube and the feed. There's no part of the breather tube left in the feed. If there is, there's some special methods and tools that you can use to very easily remedy that situation. I'll show you guys that in a future video. But right now we're in good shape. We've got the breather tube separated from the feed, and none of the breather tube remains inside the feed. Next, of course, you just want to remove the clutch ring. Sometimes these will fall off, and sometimes they're stuck as part of the shellacking, or whoever had the pen worked on before. Alright, so that particular clutch ring is quite difficult to remove from the connector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to soak the sack guard, the sack, the black connector with the clutch ring still attached, the nib, the breather tube, and the ink collector in an ultrasonic bath. You can check the blog out to learn how to make your own pen flush. It's literally pennies to the gallon, and very easy to make. I make it 3-4 gallons at a time because I use a ton of this stuff, but you guys can check the blog out to learn how to do that. So we're going to soak this for about 6 minutes or so, 6 to 8 minutes, and when we're done we'll come back and see if that has loosened up the clutch ring and perhaps cleaned some of the other parts up a little bit for us. Alright, so we've completed our 8-minute soak in the ultrasonic cleaner, and here's what we have. We have the sack guard, the sack, the connector, the clutch ring. We have a very clean ink collector. We have a somewhat clean breather tube. We'll take some micro mesh to the outside of that a little bit later to remove some of that corrosion. And then our nib itself has cleaned up quite nicely in the ultrasonic. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to see if we can get this clutch ring off. We'll see if the ultrasonic helped any at all there. Looks like it's coming slightly loose there, so that's a tremendous help. See, that's going to pop right off the clutch ring itself, and it's got a little bit of corrosion there on the inside. We'll see if we can remove that with a ruse cloth or perhaps a scraper in a bit. Now the next thing would be to try to remove the sack guard from the pen, and what I like to do there is go back again to the grippers and see if we can separate those two, and I'll show you what the ink sac looks like when it's attached to the end of the connector, if we can get it apart. Again, sometimes these come right apart, and sometimes they're quite stubborn. This one looks like it's going to be a little bit stubborn, so what I'm going to do again on this is I'm going to go back to the heat bath and soak this for about 4 minutes up to about right here in about 180 degree water, and see if we can loosen that up, and I'll be back. Alright, wow, that took forever and a half. What I ended up doing was I did about 3 more treatments in a heat bath. I did about 3 more rounds in the ultrasonic cleaner, and finally I put this in a heat bath literally up to about right there, and the temperature of the water was just off of boil, and I think I've finally gotten this thing to break loose for us. So let's go ahead and take this connector and sack out and see what that looks like on the inside. As you can see, the sack is in pretty good condition. It looks like perhaps this sack is original to the pen. It's a little bit warped and twisted, so the next step would be to replace the sack with a brand new plyglass sack, and I will do that in the next step of the restoration. Stay tuned. Alright, here is how to replace a Parker 51 Aerometric plyglass sack. What we have here on the left, of course, is the connector, and then this is the sack that looks to me original to the pen. It's got quite a bit of aging discoloration on it, but other than that, it's in really good shape. A lot of these sacks will literally last forever, but this one needs to be replaced. One, because it's a little bit twisted, as you can see, and two, it just doesn't quite meet up to my standards. So what I normally do is take a dental pick like this and just insert it right there on the top of the nipple, the sack nipple, and pull the sack off like so. And then what we will do then is replace that sack with a plyglass reproduction sack that looks like so. And what that will do is that will slide over the sack nipple like so, and we will put some shellac around that and seal that up, and it'll be it'll be literally as good as new. Alright, so here you can see our new plyglass sack. I don't know if you can see that or not on the top, but it's not quite square to itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pair of scissors here and just trim that off right there, the part that's not square, and square that up so that it seats well down onto the sack nipple on the connector, like so. That looks pretty good. Then what we'll do is we'll take our sack cement or shellac. I got this particular bottle at fountainpensacks.com. They've got a lot of great stuff over there on their site. Restoration wise, it's a really good place, and I would suggest you check it out if you're into pen repair at all. You want to shake the bottle of shellac up really good before you use it, and then open the shellac up like so. And then what you want to do is take just a little bit of the shellac and put it on this sack nipple like so. I like to put it about halfway to 3/4 down toward the where the sack will eventually seat on there. And you don't have to use a lot, but make sure you get enough that you're going to get a good seal all the way around like so. And then what you want to do is take your new plyglass sack and sort of pinch it just a little bit to get it out around, and it should just slide right over the end of that sack nipple, and just snug it up to the base there so that you've got a good solid connection all the way around. And what I like to do is store this vertically like this. Usually store them overnight. You can probably get by with I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. I've heard of folks shellacking these up and filling the pens and such, within 30 or 40 minutes to an hour after doing it. But I like for it to set up overnight, so we'll set that aside, let that harden, and we'll go on to the next step of our restoration. Okay, next up is the breather tube. There's a couple of things that I like to do to the breather tubes to make sure that they're functioning properly. This is a piece of music wire, literally just doubled over, that I got up at Hobby Lobby. I think they call it piano wire or music wire. They've got several different sizes. I'm not sure what size this is, but this is the piece that that I use in my restoration work. The first thing that I like to do is take this music wire and just run it down this breather tube like so, and sort of twist it around just a little bit to make sure that the inside of that breather tube is completely free of gunk and whatever else might be in there. It looks pretty clear there. You can see we got just a little bit of gunk out of there from the water that we had left over from our soak before. I don't know if you can see that or not, but a little bit of gunk that we got out of there, and that is good. And then the 51 breather tubes have a hole right here on the side that is about 7 millimeters up from the end of the breather tube where it goes into the feed. And I take the end of the music wire like so and put it in that hole and wiggle it around just a little bit, again, to make sure that there are no obstructions in the breather tube and that it's going to work properly. And then one more time I will take the music wire back through the breather tube and make sure that we've got all of the gunk out of it like so. And that looks pretty good. Second thing I like to do to the breather tubes, especially like this, you can see it's got a little bit of corrosion on the ends of it. Not as bad as some I've seen, but it's not perfectly decorroded. And I like to use a piece of micro mesh like this. This is a couple-inch square. This happens to be a 36 grit. And what I do is I lay the breather tube flat like this on a piece of paper towel with a kitchen towel under it, and literally take the micro mesh, which is just a fine sandpaper pad, is basically all that it is, and roll the breather tube back and forth on the paper towel and use the micro mesh to get the corrosion off of the outside of the breather tube, and then we'll do it the other way and get that shined up really nice so that it looks nice going into the pen. Of course, nobody will really see it because obviously it'll be inside the sack, inside the sack guard, but I like to make sure that it's as clean as it can be and looking, as new as possible on the pen. So make sure that you've got the breather tube bored out and cleaned of all the debris. Clean the little side breather hole out, and then this last step here, what I like to do is take just a little bit of micro mesh and make sure that the breather tube, just make sure it looks nice. And that's going to be it on the breather tube. That's a good looking breather tube. That's going to give a lot of years of service to come. All right, next up is the nib. Most of the nibs that came on the Parker 51s, both the Aerometrics and the Vacuumatics, were made out of 14 karat gold. The exception being the nibs that were made for the Parker 51 Special. Those are made out of a material called octanium, which is Parker's fancy way of saying not gold. But this nib is 14 karat gold. It's in really good shape. You can't see it. You can't see this on the video, but I've looked at the nib under my loupe, and what it says on it, and this is typical of most of the Parker nibs. What it says on it is Parker, made in the USA, and then it's got the letters PU-PL, and then it's got 952, and then underneath of it it's got 2 dots. Now what it should say is 1952, but obviously when they rolled and stamped this nib, the one fell in this little bitty notch here at the bottom of the nib, and so on the right hand side of that notch it literally says 952 with 2 dots under it, and it should say 1952 with 2 dots on it, which means that this nib was manufactured in the second quarter of 1952. What I like to do to the nibs, not in every case, but in a lot of them, is take just a dab, just a very little dab of the Simichrome on the end of a Q-tip like so, and use that to polish up the nib just a little bit, being careful of course with the tines, and making sure not to bend the nib at all. And you can see it's getting a lot of oxidation and whatnot using the semichrome off of the gold nib. And then I'll take a microfiber cloth that I use specifically. I've got one for just about every substance that I use. This particular one here, this green one, is the one that I use with the semichrome, and just literally buff out the semichrome, buff the outside of the nib like so. And it doesn't take much to clean it up at all. It's all the tarnish off. And then what I'll do is I'll follow it with a jeweler's rouge cloth. It's red on one side, rouge obviously, and then it's a sort of a tan kind of microfiber felt on one side. So the first thing you do is to polish the nib with the red side of the rouge cloth like so. Get that all nice and polished up. And again, it doesn't take much. These things are quite resilient, and the semichrome is good. Of course, the rouge cloth is magic. And then you use the tan side or the yellow side of the rouge cloth to really bring out the shine and the nib. And you can see that thing looks just about like it did the day it rolled off the Parker factory. Beautiful. And the final thing I like to do on the nibs, this is actually a piece of, I don't know if it's Mylar or not, but it's a piece of plastic shim that actually came with a palette parallel pen, and it's designed to use to clean out the nibs of the pilot parallel. You can use brass to do this. I've got some brass sheets that also use to do this, but brass is a little obviously harder and more harsh than the plastic is. So what I'll do is I'll take this little plastic shim and literally insert it between the tines of the nib like so, and just run it up and down a couple of times to make sure that you don't have any gunk or debris or paper or ink or in this case any semichrome left in the nib, and what you end up with is a nib that looks almost brand new. Fantastic, huh? Alright, next up is the clutch ring. I had mentioned earlier in the video that I thought that had a little bit of corrosion in it, as you can see just to the right of my thumb there. There's a little black spot. Let's see what we can do about that. First we'll take our dental pick here and just sort of scrape the inside of it a little bit and see if we can knock any of that loose. Doesn't seem like it really wants to cooperate much. Let's scrape it a little harder and see what we can shake loose. It's almost impossible to hurt these things, especially on the inside. Again, not a whole lot of luck with the dental pick. So let's go back to the semichrome, dab just another little dab on the inside of a Q-tip, and see if we can use that to get the corrosion out of the inside of the clutch ring here. Yeah, we're doing some good there. Definitely doing some good. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's getting a lot of it out. Scrub that a little bit like so, and then use my semichrome cloth to wipe the excess semichrome off, and then we'll come back and follow that with the rouge cloth Just some crumb out of the way here so I don't get it all over everywhere. Polish this thing up with the rouge cloth. And what I'm doing now is running it sort of widthwise through my fingers to get the outside of it clean, and then flip it over and do it flat like that. Shine it up on both sides. And then what I like to do is take a corner of the rouge cloth and put it in to the clutch ring like so, and then just spin that clutch ring on the inside of the rouge cloth like so, and then we'll go back and use the tan or beige side of the rouge cloth and shine this thing up to where it looks nearly brand new. Again, we'll do the same thing. Put the corner through, draw it up tight to the inside of the rouge cloth, and then spin it around a few times. And what you end up with is a clutch ring that is in perfect condition. One thing I want to mention quickly before we go any further is this ink collector. Some of them will come out crystal clear like this, looking brand new. Others of them will come out stained with ink that you literally can't get out. As long as the fin channels are not clogged with ink, it doesn't hurt the functionality of it all. But what I wanted to point out to you was this little piece of black ebonite. Almost looks like a piece of mechanical pencil lead in there. Parker put that in there to keep good air ink interchange going. The later models had, instead of the piece of ebonite there, they actually had like a little iron with heat applied that bridged that channel there to keep it open. So if you're dealing with a collector like ink collector like this, make sure that you don't lose that little piece of ebonite in there. If you do, you can replace it with the appropriate sized pencil lead. But I just wanted to point that out before we go any further. All right, next up is the sack guard. Most of these don't need a whole lot of attention. This one is in actually excellent shape. What I like to do on the sack guards is just quickly hit them with the rouge cloth like so, and onto the ribbed press bar, and just give them a quick shine like so, and then obviously use the other part of the rouge cloth to sort of get that final luster to it. And again, what you have is a sack guard that looks essentially as good as the day that it rolled out of the Parker factory. But again, these don't need a whole lot of attention, but I do like to hit them with a rouge cloth just to touch them up a bit. Alright, next up is the feed, and we're going to go back to our music wire and just take it and gently put it into the end of the feed like that, and just gently sort of use it as a feeler gauge to make sure that you don't have any debris in there. And I don't know if you can see this or not on the video, but the feed, much like the breather tube, has a hole in the side of it here that I like to just very gently touch out with the music wire to make sure that we don't have any gunk in there. And then we're going to go back to our plastic shim that we used when we're working on the nib. This particular Parker feed has a channel that's cut right down the center of it, and you want to take this little piece of plastic and just gently run it in that channel to make sure that there's no dried ink or debris or any kind of gunk in that channel. Be real careful with the feed, as I mentioned earlier. It's very fragile, and just make sure there's no gunk in it, and that one was very clean. This is the brass equivalent that we would use on difficult situations, like nibs that were had terrible flow issues or something like that. And that's really all that you need to do on the feed of the Parker 51.
All right, next up on the list, we're going to do some work on this cap and see what we can do about that little spot of brassing there, and also see what we can do to just get the cap up in shape. For that, I'm going to go back to the semichrome, and again, using just a tiny dab of semichrome like so. Just going to spread it evenly over the cap like this. You can already see that it's getting a ton of corrosion and things like that off the cap. I'm just going to spread that evenly over the cap like so. Flip it around to the clean side of the Q-tip. Just continue doing this on the cap all the way around, and even up on the clip area. And scrub that thing really good, like so. I'm not sure if that brassing is going to come off there or not. That looks like it may be more or less permanent on the pen, although it is looking a lot better than it did even just a few minutes ago. We'll continue to do this semichrome treatment on this particular cap for another couple of minutes until we get it good and buffed in. And then what we will do is we will take our cloth that we use for our semichrome that you saw earlier in the video and give it a good buffing. Right there is where the brassing was. A lot of it was a stain actually. And it's coming out quite nicely. Not sure how well you can see that, but it's certainly a lot better than it was. And again, this doesn't take much to get these back in really good shape considering their age. Do a little bit more work on that stained brassing area and see if we can get that thing completely out. Get that thing to completely come out. Let's try another dab of semichrome on there. See what that'll do for us. We'll concentrate right on that area. See if we can have any luck. So a lot of corrosion coming off of there. It's a good thing. Most of these Parker caps that I've run across, particularly the gold-filled one like this, will clean up quite nicely, even if they're much more corroded than this particular one. It looks like some of that stain is going to remain behind, but it's not a huge issue. And again, it's much better than it was. It gives the pen some character. We'll finish polishing up the semichrome, and then we will switch over to our rouge cloth. Do essentially the same thing with our rouge cloth on the pen that we did back when we were doing the nib and polishing up the nib. We'll first start with the red side of the rouge cloth and give it a good firm scrub, including around the cap, or I'm sorry, the clip, the lip where it attaches to the pen, and down on the base of the cap, like so. that little stain spot in there cleaned up much better than I thought it would, actually. This cap is going to be quite nice when we get it finished. Again, I like to take the corner of the rouge cloth, similar to what we did on the clutch ring, and put it just under the clip and give it a good polish, like so, on both sides. And then we'll take the other side of our rouge cloth and give it a final polish. Again, being sure to get onto the clip sides and in the grooves of the traditional Parker feathers, side of the clip, and down near the end of the clip as well, and of course around the top where the clip attaches to the cap, like so. And then we'll do the same thing again with this. We'll put the corner through slightly, and being careful not to bend the clip. Just give it a good polish under the clip and on the underside of the clip as well at the same time. And then we'll finish up with just an overall polish of the cap. And as you can see, this thing is cleaned up really, really nice. This is going to be a nice gold clip. You can still just barely see where the stain was. It wasn't. It doesn't appear to me to be really brassing. It's some kind of stain there. I'm going to work on that some more a little bit later and see if I can clean that up. But that's essentially how you restore a Parker 51 gold-filled cap. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is work on the shell of this pen. And you can see in there that this particular shell has got some gunked up dried ink in the threads. That's hard to get. It's hard to get focused on the camera there. You can see flashes of dried up, gunked up ink in there. What we're going to do to remedy that situation is under a magnifying glass, we're going to take this little dental pick and just hand chase these threads essentially and scrape out the gunk as best that we can. And you can see the little particles of gunked up dried ink that we're getting out of there. And we're going to continue to do this until all those threads are clear of the debris and the dried up ink, and make sure that they thread back onto the connector well. The main thing that you want to be careful of when you're doing this is to make sure that you don't damage the threads on the inside of the hood or the shell. You can see all the black crud and gunk that came out of there, dried ink, dried shellac, things like that. So when you're using the dental pick in there, just be sure that you don't damage the threads of the pen. And then you want to take your connector with the new sack on and just make sure that the hood threads on there like it should. And this one absolutely does. So in the final assembly, the clutch ring will be right below there. But this threads are clean now inside of this hood, and it's going to thread on nicely to the connector. All right, the next thing we're going to do to the hood and the barrel of this pen is give them just a nice little brief polish with some polishing compound, and this has got micro abrasives in it that will help to bring back the luster of the hood in the shell of this pen. And we're just going to spread a little bit of that on there and rub it back and forth gently, like so, until it gets good and coated. And you can already see some of the dirt and grime that is on the outside of this pen. I mean, it doesn't, you know, just to look at it, it doesn't look like that there's anything wrong with it, but you know, it's got no telling how many years of dirt and grime accumulated on the outside of it. And then we'll take our polishing cloth and literally just polish this up. Like so. And we'll take this special little size Q-tip here and get down on the inside of the shell where the nib and the feed will come through when we put it back together, and polish that up. Try to get the gunk and the dirt out of there, like so. You can see a lot of stuff in there that, you know, it's hard to see with the naked eye, but you know it's there, because when you do 100 of these and you use this polish on them, you can see it on the paper towel, and you can see it on the rag as it comes off. And polish that up a little bit, and now we'll do the same thing to the barrel. This is not a real harsh abrasive that I'm using. If it were, I would mark off or mask off the barrel imprints on the pens. This barrel imprint is quite worn to begin with, and you can barely read it under a 10x loop. What you want to do is polish that up with the abrasive polish, and polish it off almost as if you were doing a wax or something like that. No, this is not a wax, but it's a polish. The other thing that you want to make sure of on these Parkers is that you clean, make sure that the hole in the end of the barrel is free so that it can get airflow. And you can see that this one is actually clogged up with gunk or no telling what. So we're going to go back to our music wire, and we're going to take the music wire and push it right down in that hole, like so. Goes all the way through the pen. And we're going to clean out that little breather hole. That will help the pen not to build up pressure differentials from the temperature of your hand or the environment or whatever. And it's just one of the steps that you got to go through if you're paying real close attention to detail, to make sure that your restoration is as good as it could be. And now what you can see is that breather hole is completely clear. You can see through it now. You can actually see the paper towel below it. So we're in great shape on that. Got that aspect of it done, and we'll polish the end of it here quickly. And again, we can see through the hole, the breather hole in the end of the barrel. You can see the paper towel below it, and so that's in great shape. All right, the next thing you're going to want to do to the shell and the barrel of this pen is give them a little bit of polish finish to them. You've got a couple of options when you do this. A lot of people use carnauba wax, which is really excellent product to use on these. Some people use Renaissance wax that a lot of the museums use for their restoration. This is a particular micro finishing product that they use in the aerospace industry for the inside of aircraft canopies and such. And what you want to do is you basically just want to rub that on there like that and let it dry for a few minutes, almost like you would a car wax. All right, after that has dried for a few minutes, you want to come back to your microfiber cloth and literally just buff it out like you would any other kind of wax and bring it to a nice glossy shine. And be careful with the tip of the hood there that you don't crack it or break it off. But these lucite hoods and barrels on the 51s are quite robust and frankly can take quite a bit of abuse. But basically you just polish that up with your microfiber cloth like you would if you're waxing a car. And man, this thing is going to look fantastic when we get it done. Takes a few minutes to get that luster back to the pen and to get that polish buffed to the appropriate level. Make sure it's all off there really. Again, it's very similar to doing a car wax. And again, you want to make sure that you did not clog up the hole into the barrel. And as you can see, we did not. So the whole end of the barrel is in good shape. Still no gunk there. And look at how nice and shiny the hood and the barrel turned out on this pen. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, we've hit a snag on this restoration that I'm going to deal with. We're going to have to end up replacing the feed on this pen, and here's why. Take a look. What I'm going to end up having to do with this pen is replace the feed on it. The feed that was in there, I don't know if you can see this really on the camera or not, but it's got just a little bit of a nick right out of the end of it, and I don't think it'll really hurt the functionality of the pen, but I'm going to go ahead and replace the feed on this pen to make sure that the restoration is as perfect as it can be. So we'll set that aside, and I'll use that in a pen perhaps that I'm going to keep myself. But here is a new spare feed that I had on hand that we're going to use as a replacement in this particular pen. One of the things I like to do on every restoration that I perform is take a series of high-quality still pictures of the pieces, parts, and components of the restoration. It does a couple things for me. First, it provides an historical record of how the internal parts look and how the components go together, and it gives a very good idea of what steps were performed in the restoration. The second thing it does is on the pens that I decide to sell, either on eBay or my retail storefront, it gives the prospective buyer a very good look into the inside of the pen and hopefully speaks to the quality of restoration work that I do. I'm going to drop a few of those stills in now, and you guys can take a look. One of the keys to taking good still pictures of pens and really any other kind of photography is to make sure that your white balance on your camera is set to the style of light that you use. Here's the style of light that I use for my light box when I take my stills. As you can see, the color temperature on that light is 5,000 Kelvin, and what you do on your camera is you just dial in your manual white balance to equal 5,000 Kelvin and take your pictures. And what it does is it gives you very accurate color reproduction and makes your pictures turn out 100 times better than the typical picture that you see on eBay. Anyway, that's just an interesting tip I thought I'd toss in there. Okay, now for the moment of truth. It's time to put this thing back together and see what it looks like. One of the first things that I like to do is to take the new Plyglass sack and dunk it in a jar of 100% pure pharmaceutical grade talc. Make sure you use 100% pharmaceutical grade talc and not the stuff from your bathroom. What this will do is when we put the sack guard over the top of this, it will provide it with some lubrication and eventually result in less wear on the sack. So the first thing that I do is I take the breather tube. You want to make sure that you take the breather tube end with the hole in the side of it and put that closest to the feed, like so, and make sure that that's in there good and snug. This ink collector has got a wide channel in one side and a narrow channel on the other side. You want the wide channel to end up on top of your, or you want your nib to end up, you want the wide channel of the collector to end up on the top of your nib. So what I do is I take and I insert the feed and the breather tube with the wide channel on the top. Then I take the nib and slide it right over the feed down into the collector, and that should allow it to line up reasonably well. A lot of times you have to give them a twist to get them properly seated, and then make sure that the wide channel on the collector is lined up with the top of the nib, like so. And then what you do is you take the collector assembly and you put it down inside the connector, like so. And what you end up with is nib feed ink collector, the black connector that connects the collector with the new Plyglass sack, and then of course that's coated in talc, and down inside of that is the breather tube for your pen. Then what you do is you take the sack guard and you simply slip it over the top of the sack that you've coated in the talc. Now I normally do not shellac these on unless they're loose. This one is going to be a fairly snug fit, and I think that's going to be just fine for this restoration. And of course you want to drop your clutch ring on like so until it's all the way down. And then what you want to do is, and this is the fiddly little part, and this takes a couple of goes to do. You put your hood on and tighten it all the way down. Snug, like so. And as you can see, we're slightly out of alignment with the point of the hood and the nib. So we have to take the hood back off and twist the nib feed and collector assembly slightly to the right. This takes a couple times really to get right, but you want to make sure that you do that, otherwise it'll look kind of funny. I'm going to check this with a loop. Alright, under a loop, that alignment is really good actually. So what you do now is you remove your hood, and so what you do now is you take some shellac and you just want to go around roughly the top half of these threads here on the connector, and what that'll do is it'll shellac the hood in place and prevent any leaks or other bad things from happening to the pen. You don't need a whole lot of this, but just make sure that you get a good covering in the thread part, and then you take your hood and screw it on to the connector like so. Get it nice and lined up. I'm going to check it with a loop. Alright, under a loop, that alignment with the center point of the hood is going right down the center of the tines of the nib. You want to make sure you don't have any excess shellac on the edge of the hood. And then what you'll do is you will take your barrel, screw the barrel onto the pen like so, and give it one final check with the loop. Everything looks to be well aligned. Put the cap on, and there you have it. A fully restored Parker 51 Aerometric from start to finish. Alright, there you have it, guys. A full restoration of a Parker 51 Aerometric from start to finish. If you like the video, be sure and subscribe to the channel. Leave some comments in the sections below. Be sure and check out the retail store and the blog. It's got a lot of interesting pens on it, a lot of interesting articles on the blog already. Stay tuned to the channel. I've got a ton of videos coming, and look forward to talking to you guys soon. Again, be sure and subscribe to the channel, and hope you have a great day. Thank you.